Diversity leads to innovation. We have heard that like a million times. But let's be honest. As much as there are so many great things talked about diversity, let's be honest that diversity is discomforting too. So what shall we do? Welcome to Thank God It's a Story Saturday, a weekly video series where I share stories with you that you can use to make your messages connect. Today's story I was reminded of because I've been working on a diversity project, a large story-led diversity project for the last 2 months. And this particular story I had watched on a video in the YouTube channel where there is a conversation between Senior Minister of Singapore, Tharman Shanmugaratnam, and Stephen Sacker, who is an English journalist who presents BBC Hard Talk. Now, in this video, Stephen Sacker asks our Senior Minister that, this whole proposition of diversity in Singapore, which is really a very special thing about Singapore, where different races work and live together, how have they achieved it? Is it because it has been quite a top-down approach? Has it been an authoritative way of having achieved that? So our Senior Minister responds to Stephen Sacker. Let's hear what he has to say.
The most intrusive social policy in Singapore has turned out to be the most important. And it has a level of intrusiveness that doesn't come comfortably to the liberal mind.
What is it?
Housing estates. 85% of Singapore lives in public housing. It's not public housing that you are familiar with in the UK. It's not like your council housing, because when it's 85%, it covers the lower income group, the middle income group, the upper middle income group. These are middle class housing estates. But every single block of flats, block of apartments, and every single precinct requires an ethnic balance. That's intrusive.
How
because
do you
you're constraining.
It requires an ethnic balance in the sense the government decides how many of each ethnic grouping are going.
So once a particular ethnic group gets beyond a certain quota in that block or that precinct, the resale market has to adjust. You can't just get more and more of the same people concentrating themselves in the same neighborhood. And I'd say this is, when it was first done, I don't think we knew how important it was going to be.
I mean, it sounds extraordinary.
It was done because
authoritarian.
So it was intrusive. And it turns out to be our greatest strength. Because once people live together, they're not just walking the corridors together every day, taking the same elevator up and down. Their kids go to the same kindergarten. Their kids go to the same primary school. Because all over the world, young kids go to school very near to where they live. And they grow up together. The lessons coming out of Baltimore, the lessons coming out of France's large cities, the lessons coming out of all our societies show that neighborhoods matter, place matters, where you live matters. It matters much more than economists thought.
Now, when I watched this video, I wanted to understand more about the development of HDB homes here in Singapore. My research led me to an essay or an article written by Mei Koo, who is a researcher at Center for Livable Cities. And the title of this particular article is Inclusion Through Intervention, Living with Diversity the Singapore Way. In this article, she tells a little story about Professor Chua Beng Huat, a sociologist who was responsible or was involved in the development of these HDB houses. In the story, in the essay, in the article, the sociologist says that, when I first heard about the development of the HDB houses, I saw an ad in the Straits Times, which is the main newspaper here, the national newspaper here, that they are looking for a sociologist. So he says, I called up Liu Tai Ker, who was then the CEO of HDB, and I said, you're building houses for Singaporeans. Why do you need a sociologist? And he says his response was that, I don't know what the sociologist would do, but I do know I need one. And he says that the interesting thing is that he knew at that time that building houses is not just about putting structures together. It is about how in everyday lives Singaporeans would actually be, how would they behave, and how would they come in contact with each other. And it was his thought process that led him to a place where building the Housing Development Board and having developed them in such a way that people come together, people interact together. So when you put these stories together, the story of the sociologist and what our senior minister had to say, you clearly understand what kind of effort has gone behind making a diverse group of people come together. What is the point of the story? The point of the story is that almost every organization today, diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of the top 3 agenda items for them. We're all busy talking about data, reports, process, procedures, plans for diversity, equity, inclusion, but none of us are willing to understand the psychology of it. We're so focused on the hardware of it that we have forgotten to install the software of it. So it's important we try to understand these people who in the end are diverse, which can be discomforting, who have to come together. Stay storied. I'll see you here next Saturday with another story.